So, your recent ideas about uh, developing some classes on the theme of dreams and wishes. Now this is very good in one sense, in one way. It's very defective. It's very lacking in another. But let's start with what's very good about it. Well, it's a universal, first of all. Rather than choosing, a Jewish text, Genesis or holiday Hanukkah or whatever, which in any case, if you were to choose that, or the book of Joshua, Jonah, if you look at the examples that I've been sharing with you in the timeline I've recently, put in there, think sheets for sixth graders, what I call think sheets for small group discovery work on chapter 1 of Joshua. And I've also put in last night, or the day before, in the next section of the timeline, for high school students, what I call a packet of clues on the book of Jonah. That's something, Liz, that I had mentioned in one of my videos in the first part of our course, in the first section of the timeline. And that spoke to you from Zelda's poem, that we are all drowning. So in all of those, even if we begin with the book of Joshua or Hanukkah or Jonah, we're going to be arriving at, we're going to be identifying, because that's what we're striving for in education, is, as John Dewey says, as I shared with you with the example of teaching the sharing ideas about the holiness, the sacredness of the land of Israel. One has to identify something in our students' experience which is similar to elements, experiences in our so-called subject. I mean, but in order to do that, as I've said over and over, and modeled through examples that I'm putting out there that I've developed, or say the Purim curriculum. If we've taken a good look at the Purim curriculum from Machon Hartman, that's in one of our recent sections in the timeline. Take a look at that. What is clear from all of those, curriculum, these are all case studies, all of this, in developing curriculum, how you go about it. And the first thing is you've got to have a philosophy of the subject. You have to have an interpretation. You have to have some in-depth ideas. And what does it mean, ideas? Ideas about how, in your subject, universal experiences, human experiences that we know, that I know, first of all. I don't start with my students. I start with my experience. Can I identify, locate some experiences within me which is might be similar to some experiences in my subject? Then I have to go and say, who are my students? What is salient, and what in their experiences, what is particularly, central, vital for them in their experience, depending on their age and society, etc. And then I say, so are there some elements in their experience which is similar to the elements or which I have located between me and this subject? And what would be similar between those experiences that I've identified in the subjects that speak to me and experiences of their own? And then the next stage is how can I invite them to to become aware, to try out focusing on these common experiences, discovering them in the texts and discovering them in themselves. How would I do that? In other words, through a board game, through movies, through songs, through role-playing, through a mural, etc. There's so many ways through a debate, through so many ways, through a packet of clues that are texts and pictures and music, etc., for small group work, where in a small group people can discover ideas, pulling them out of these hints, right? So there's all kinds of ways. But first, one has to know where you're going, as I've shared with you. Somebody says to me in Jerusalem, is it a good idea I'll get on the bus number 4 and then I'll get on the 9? Well, it could be a great idea. It could be not a good idea, yes? It all depends on where do you want to go. If you know in just a very general sort of way, oh, I want to do something on dreams and, wishes. Well, okay, that's very general. And, that's like telling me you want to go to Ramat Eshkol neighborhood in Jerusalem. Well, if you were to go there right after the 6 Days War, 1967, there was a very small, I think it was a brand new neighborhood then. So then there was only, 1 or 2 bus stops. But now it's a huge neighborhood. There's 8 or 9, bus stops or whatever. And, if you give me too general, I want to go to Ramat Eshkol, you don't give me a very specific address, I don't really know. Take the bus number 4 and the 9, that's right. But, where to get off more precisely, you and your students might get off at the wrong stop because it'll be too general. You'll teach them, never again, never forget. Well, but, never forget what? Never forget what? Because a lot of people are going to learn from never forget, never again, that the whole world hates Jews, and anyway, we're superior, and they're inferior because of their hatred of us and, other aspects of our culture and religious tradition and how we think we know theirs. And, this is terrible. This violates several commandments and obligations of Judaism to love all people and to recognize the divine image in all people. So never again what? I mean, so we're almost always much too general in our educational planning. As I've said, we put as objective, we're asked to write a lesson plan, and then there should be an objective, and the objective is like 1 sentence or something. Well, that's too general. Students should feel it should never happen again. Okay. What is the it? All right, let's say the Holocaust. How does one understand the Holocaust? There's no getting away from, thinking. Teaching it first to ourselves in some depth. And then writing up a page or 2 of interpretation, of philosophy, of what is this about. Never forget what. What is the Holocaust? What does it teach us? There's many different ideas about this. So what is your idea? Ideas. And a curriculum will certainly share not only yours. Part of a curriculum is to open up people to think critically, and therefore to look at, there's a number of approaches. But certainly, education involves pushing the world in a certain direction. People will say that's indoctrination. No, everybody is pushing the world in a certain direction when you teach. Everybody is reflecting biases, even when you think you're not, and you're just, opening it up for people. Well, you're not opening everything up for people. You're opening up only what you know. And you're opening up what underlying assumptions adhere to you, even though you think you're being objective. No such thing. So what is the difference between education and indoctrination? Education is when you share a point of view. Everybody's sharing a point of view. If you think you're not, you're actually sharing it even more, because you're not aware that you're sharing it. And then you can't calibrate and limit a little bit and watch out for over-influence. So what is then more indoctrination? I think it's more of a relative, too much influencing versus education. It's how one takes a point of view. how one takes a particular point of view, a value position in education in class. Do I do it by also sharing how I got to this idea, the process, the reasoning behind it, so that students can judge for themselves and go through that process and see if it makes sense, if that makes sense to them. Do I share other points of view? Do I make clear that there are other points of view and go into those a little bit? Do I cultivate, facilitate an atmosphere in the classroom in which the student can say, I don't agree with that, or wait a minute, what about this, what about that? I don't want to, or, whatever. So, okay. So again, this is a good thing to just choose a universal theme. And what I was just going off on was that even if we choose Bible or Book of Joshua, I'm going to end up with a universal theme. I'm going to end up locating an experience which is universal, which I can recognize in my experience, and then my students will be able to recognize in their experience. But to begin right off with a universal experience, and then to go to the text, it's just an opposite, direction, reverse direction, and then to go to Bible for the Joseph stories, or to rabbinic texts about dreams, etc. And of course, there's not one view on anything in the Talmud. So this is particularly can be very good to begin with a universal experience. But again, it's a problem because then we ask the students after class, right after, a week after, 2 weeks after, 2 months, 2 years, 5 years. How is the class? Oh yeah, prophet, whatever the theme. It doesn't have to be just dreams. It could be on prophecy. It could be on advocacy for Israel. It could be on Hanukkah. Whatever it is. If it's done with, as you say, with films and with universal idea, however general, and undeveloped into more specific elements, dimensions of that experience. And with art expression, Joe Milgram, you've talked about bringing in art expression. So it won't be boring. This is nothing to sneeze at. This is very good. Students will associate that positive experience with Judaism generally. So this is an achievement. But when we ask them, what about dreams? What was the ideas? What came out from that? Or what was some different thoughts that maybe you haven't thought about before concerning dreams, concerning wishes, and concerning God's role in any of that, or concerning prophecy, as I say, or Hanukkah, or whatever the theme is. They say, I don't know. They can't really say. Why can't they say? Because the teacher, the curriculum developer, but really this isn't really curriculum development. It may be the very, very first stages, but it's not really. It's good ideas. It's some good ideas, potentially good ideas. Somewhat, rather good, because as I say, at least it's not boring. But curriculum development is a very disciplined and critical-minded. It's a very critical. It's characterized by its critical character. It's a critical activity. Critical in both senses of the word. It involves vital, fateful, necessary exploration, clarification of ideas and their repercussions, values, but also, so that's critical in the sense of it's vital, but also critical in the sense of like the sister of this guy the man leading the Seder, Pesach Seder, from Woody Allen's movie Crimes and Misdemeanors. She's raising difficult questions. She's raising difficult questions. Some of you saw that, it was very cynical, which is what the leader of the Seder says, her brother. But actually, remember, the young people, the camera then moves onto the faces of the young people, and one of them, a little bit of the older one, says in a kind of low voice, I think this is interesting. Yeah, that's what makes curriculum, that's what makes life, I mean, any kind of thing in life, interesting, is nuance, is complication, is something of some depth that you can, and honesty about the most pressing issues that are involved, ethical or religious or whatever. Really, the biggest question, we can say, in education that's worthy of the word education, whether it's Shakespeare, social studies, Jewish or general, European social, American social studies, religious studies, Jewish education, Judaism. Really, the most important question is, but is it true? What might be some truth in this that I'm thinking of teaching and of sharing with others, with my students? How is it? How might it be true? And true to human experience? Does it stand up to human experience? Or can it be questioned? This is what the Talmud does. This is what the texts I've been sharing with you, trying to share with you. You don't really react to them almost at all. You've almost at all have not reacted to them from the get-go, from the beginning of the course. And what's amazing is that it's not coincidental. They all relate to what you've especially gotten into with some depth the past couple of weeks. Questions of God, belief in God, questions of meaning, dreams, wishing. This is all related to a serious man, etc. And the serious man, I shared with you scenes, I shared with you how it's like the book of Job, I share with you different interpretations, how to understand it not literally, as with all important films. I shared with you a short essay, yes, in our first section of the timeline, our first weeks, talking about the ideas of the film. But you don't react. You don't. It's given. Where's the give and take? You don't say, "Oh, that was an interesting idea." A little bit, but not very much. Very, very little. There's an opportunity, being missed here. All right, you're not going to understand everything. I'm all over the place, whatever, and it's a lot. Well, that's why we devoted, 4.5 weeks to the first section of the timeline. But you have to be a fighter. You have to wrestle, like Jacob. You have to push and say, all right, this doesn't seem so accessible to me. I mean, the Talmud page is also not so, or a good Devar Torah, or a good book, a good movie. It often begins at the end or the beginning. It's a little confusing because we didn't realize it's a flashback or a flash forward, but it's also intriguing. And we try to struggle to identify something, some way that I can get in, something that maybe can speak to me. So this is the critical question. Is it true? What are dreams? Do we actually have dreams, or our life is fully written? Therefore, dreams are just a way of starting to see our future. This is quite interesting. Well, is it interesting? What do you think about that, Roman? I mean, what do you think about that? What do the texts that I've been sharing with you? What does a serious man, think about it? What? And of course, you said you don't believe in God, and then I shared with you in our last video well, a person who says he does or she believe in God, or say you don't believe in God, or say you're not sure, I mean, this is all very unclear because it's too general. Because there's not one understanding, one experience of the reality that the word God speaks to. And the very word believe, starts us down on a very problematic road. Because it's really not about belief in Judaism. It's not about do I believe what someone said. It's about do I know from my experience something that, could be called God, the divine, the ultimate. How do you understand it, and therefore know that you don't know of that, haven't known that experience, that reality. What reality? How do you understand God? So you've said that you don't, but you haven't gone into, anything specific about why you don't. What is the approach to God that you don't believe? And maybe there's another approach which you might believe. Might identify as something that you know in your experience. But then, you talk about with older kids, you might explore what God's dream might be related to the peace issue. It's a great timing with everything now happening in Israel. Well, first of all, or second of all, what peace thing is happening in Israel? The Netanyahu government is, doing everything it can, is one approach, to doing everything it can to make sure that peace negotiations with Abu Mazen don't happen. A person who, there's every reason to know that he is someone we can reach an agreement with. Okay, there's other approaches, of course. But I think, in other words, that I think everybody would agree that he's doing everything to thwart peace negotiations. The only thing is, there is debate in Israel that our security demands occupying the West Bank, and demands that there not be a Palestinian state next to us of any kind. All right, that's an argument. When not accompanied by violence, that's part of our democracy. And an advocacy for Israel curriculum would explore these kinds of debates. But at any rate, what do we mean by God's dream? All right, I'm going to stop here. There's a whole technical issue with making these videos. It can be very problematic. They have to be made in a certain way and then uploaded to YouTube or recorded immediately within YouTube, but then it doesn't always work, and then the message is from the YouTube that you've got to just try it again, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going, and also it's a lot. I'm hitting it with a lot. So I'm going to stop here, but I hope in a few minutes to make a part 2, and we'll see what happens. See if there's anything in any of this that might speak to you. A potential learning experience means I'm going to be opening myself to something somewhat different. Whether I'm taking an architecture class, if I'm studying architecture, or if I'm studying medicine, a class in medicine, or if I'm studying Western literature, English literature, a course on Virginia Woolf, or on Marxism, or Islam. I don't have to become a Marxist if I'm taking a course on Marxism. I don't have to agree after the course with a course in archaeology or a course on architecture with what was shared in that course by the professing professor. But if it's a good course, and if I am taking the initiative and bringing myself and struggling and working to not miss an opportunity, I want to try out the approach of the course, because I can't decide if I think it might be any good, if there might be something I could adapt from it to myself. If I don't give it a chance, I want to take on hypothetically its point of view and try it out. I don't want to just learning involves before and now. I used to ask my 6th, 7th, and 8th graders teaching Bible at Solomon Schechter in the Boston area. After a couple of months studying the book of Deuteronomy or Joshua or whatever it was, we would do a siyum and a party and paint a big mural and have music on and etc. And then I also gave them a piece of paper. I said, don't write your name on it. And I asked them to write Hatanach va'ani at the top of the page. And then before and now, Lifnei v'achshav. Before we studied together this book, and now. I mean, there's some difference. Maybe something has happened a little bit. Before this was what I knew. Now this is what I knew. Or now, or and maybe I'm not sure, but about what I think of it. You see, I call it angles of appreciation or possible appreciation, not agreement necessarily. We don't know yet. But I mean, there's something missing here. There's a lot of, I don't know, Freud would call it avoidance. I'm not sure. There's a lot of holding back. There's a lot of, listening to a video that I'm sharing or looking at texts and essays that I'm putting out there or whatever. I mean, I'm not sure to what degree you're looking at those, because you're not letting me know, interacting for the most part, a little bit. All right, I'm being very harsh. That's pretty typical in rabbinic discourse. We call it the chavruta. The study partner's main goal is lahakshot kushiot v'ba'ayot, to raise difficulties, to make trouble. Lakshot is he-feel, causative, to cause trouble by raising questions and challenges and difficulties. Rabbi Yochanan, when Reish Lakish, his study partner, died, he wouldn't be consoled, and he was in terrible mourning, and he wouldn't go to the Beit Midrash to join his colleagues to engage in Torah study. So they sent one of the Chachamim, Eliezer ben Padat. I don't like to say his name because he doesn't look, when I share this story, this Talmudic story, because he doesn't look good in this story anyway. So I don't want to hurt his feelings, But he goes to Rabbi Yochanan, and they talk Torah. And to everything Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Elazar ben Padat said, there's a teaching, a tradition which supports what you just said. So everything Rabbi Yochanan said, that's what he would say. So Rabbi Yochanan ripped his clothes in a further sign of feeling ripped, of feeling broken at the death of his study partner, Reish Lakish. And he said to Rabbi Elazar ben Padat, you say that, they sent you to help me a little bit, overcome my mourning, my tremendous sense of loss for Reish Lakish, my study partner. He used to tell me everything I would say. He would have 24 different objections and difficulties he raised. And therefore my thought expanded, and went to different places. All you can say to everything I say is, it's beautiful what I'm saying. I already know that. I don't need you. I already know that's beautiful what I'm saying. I need to know, to open myself to something else. Okay, bye-bye. This is part 1. If you're courageous enough, I hope you'll join me in part 2. And yes, we'll see what happens. This is when it really starts to happen, though. I could have, well, gee, why didn't he tell us some of these things right from the first, beginning of the course? Well, first of all, I was telling you over and over again. You can't tell somebody something like that, But I was explaining how to go into the timeline, how to engage, to look, and then to share some thoughts, But I don't know. It's happening only to a very limited degree. But I could have. You say, well, but why didn't you lecture on, the steps of curriculum development or whatever? Well, because the real way to do something like that is when it becomes really relevant, when really you bring out some good ideas and questions, which you've started to, especially the past couple of weeks. As well as, I think, and then you're going to take some missteps. Anybody does when they're learning something new or something different, which all learning should involve. We're going to be taking some missteps. Those missteps are great. The children of Israel have to wander in the desert for 40 years before they get to the promised land. Why? Well, because people have to lose their way and wander and bump into and, blank wall, dead ends, and they don't get it, and they try it this way and that way, and again bump into because this is the process with a new experience, with with a new horizons, and so it's especially in reaction when you come out with something, that's onto something. That I can respond, and it may, then really speak to you more in a real way. So I do want to, I want to return to some of the movies that you mentioned, and some of the rest of what you've been, your exchange, Romy, sharing Romy and Liz, my perspective on this from the as concerns curriculum development, curriculum design, Jewish education, Judaism, life. Okay, hearing the rain. You can't hear it now. We've had our first, now the past hour or two, we have our first pretty heavy rain, winter Jerusalem rain. But I'm inside here, and I'm fine. And well, the seasons are all, part of the cycle, of life. Good. The sameness is not so good. Difference is, but difference can be challenging and difficult and even threatening. But yeah, our work is cut out for us. Okay. Take care. Don't give up. And we're going to continue. And we have only another bunch of weeks, but we could things could start to happen. You might find that you're going to see a little differently what you might be able to pull out of this experience, out of this offering, this opportunity. Let's see. I'll speak with you again a little bit later.